The most important part of any financial plan is your cash flow. Cash flow is where your money is going and how much you have. But this is really hard. As your income grows, a lot of the time your expenses grow too. And I've seen clients whose income more than doubles and they look back a few minutes later and their expenses have doubled too. I have other clients where as their income grows, they don't increase their spending even though they could, and they just can't seem to give themselves the permission to spend without guilt. The last category of clients are people who just don't know, and they kind of just spend on whims and hope everything works out. A lot of people try to address this with budgeting, but you know you aren't going to really do that. Today we're going to introduce a simple, guilt-free way to spend, a way where you know if you're spending too much, and a way where you know if you've got room to spend more. This is free, and it works at any bank. I'm Bjorn Amundsen with Quarry Hill Advisors, and I'm here to help you make smart decisions with your money. I'm sure you've tried budgeting at some point, and I'm sure you've failed. In my entire career of 20 years, I've only run into 2 or 3 good budgeters that entire time. So if you're one of them, great, keep it up, go for it. But if you're a normal person, you need a different system. The problem with budgeting is even if you're good at it, it tells you where your money went, but it doesn't tell you if you're free to spend money right now. And you have to set up some pretty complicated systems sometimes to make sure that you're on track. So let's try to find a simple system here that can fix all of those problems. A system that can work at any bank, and it's free and simple, and you can just go ahead and know exactly where you're at. So today we're going to talk about what's called the Simple Spend method. So let me introduce it to you. First off, instead of like most people where you have one checking account and all income goes into the checking account and then all expenses go out of the checking account and then you kind of look and see if you have anything left over at the end of the month, let's break it into 2 separate checking accounts, and that should help clarify when you're free. So you're going to have 2 accounts. Your first account is going to be your core account, and you're going to have all of your income go into this core account. And I do mean all. I don't care if it's Social Security, if it's work, if it's the net proceeds from rental, whatever it is, I want it to all go into the core account. And your core account is going to also be sort of a cash reserve for you. So you might want to keep something like 3 or even 6 months of expenses within that core account. Yeah, you might be missing out on some interest by having all that cash sitting out in a checking account, but for the simplification, it's probably worth it. Now, it does have to be a checking account because you're only allowed to make 6 transfers per month out of a savings account. Otherwise, a savings account would be a better idea. But due to that regulation, we need to keep it as a checking account. So we're going to have all income goes into that core account. Out of the core account, we're going to have big expenses that are recurring and that will hopefully or maybe someday change. So for instance, the most obvious one is you're going to have your mortgage come out of there every month. It does change. In 30 years, it'll be paid off, and someday that mortgage will be gone. Second thing you could have coming out of there would be something like savings. You're going to be saving now, but when you're retired, you're not going to be saving anymore, and that savings amount is going to change over time. So let's go ahead and take savings out of there. We'll have insurance. A lot of the time, insurance only comes around once a year, so a lot of times putting something like life insurance and having that come out of there is helpful. Children expenses. I'm not talking about the day-to-day expenses, but things like daycare, those are things that should come out of here. Charity and taxes are the last 2. If you owe taxes, if you get a refund, those things would go into the core account. So what we're doing here is we are separating off those big irregular expenses from our day-to-day life expenses. So our second checking account is going to be the spend account. And in the spend account, we're going to start with 1 to 2 months of spending in there. So this family, for our example, spends about $6,000 per month. So they're going to start with about $12,000 in their spend account. And we're going to transfer $6,000 per month into the spend account at the end of the month. So all they have to do every month is look at their spend account, and if there's money in there, they can spend it. If you're spending something on a credit card, if it's groceries, if it's ordinary utilities like your Excel or your electric bill, that would come out of your spend account. Checks written that are small and not for something large like a new appliance would come out of your spend account. Vacations would come out of the spend account. Anything that is your lifestyle that you want to have isolated from things like taxes or your mortgage, you would have those things coming out of your spend account. The system's real easy because it works best with the debit card, and then you can just look in your spend account and you can say, do I have money in my spend account? I do. Great, I can buy it. And if you don't have to spend it. So it's real easy where you can always see where you're at. So let's take this example a little bit further. In this example, they have two incomes. Both the husband and the wife are earning around $5,000 a month. All their money goes into the core account. They've got their mortgage coming out of here. They have their 529 savings, their Roth IRA savings, some auto and life insurance, childcare, summer childcare. Those are expenses that aren't necessarily monthly, but I made them monthly by dividing the annual expense by 12. And then they have a little bit of charity. They're spending $6,000 per month. And you can see if you add all these things up with your monthly spend of $6,000, the total is $10,273, and the remainder is $86. The beauty of this system is as they go along, if they get a raise, that is going to go into the core account. If their mortgage gets paid off, that money is going to start to build up in the core account. So your core account, by default, makes it so that you save instead of seeing that extra money in your checking account and starting to spend it. So one of the great powers of this system is that the default becomes saving rather than spending. We all start to spend the money if we see it in our checking account. Some people find that they have sometimes a big annual expense, maybe a vacation, or maybe you need a slush fund because you don't know if you need a new appliance or something like that. So some people might choose to reduce what they put into their spending account to maybe $5,500 per month, and then have $500 per month going into the big spend account. What those numbers are could be double or triple or half that for you. So the numbers don't really matter, but it might take a little while for you to figure out what the right numbers are. There are some flaws with this system. For myself, the biggest flaw was that it took me a very, very long time to acknowledge how much money we really spent. And so I would spend as best I could out of the spend account, but then suddenly run out of money due to something that should have been totally foreseeable, like a vacation. And so over and over again, I would maybe bail myself out one time out of the core account instead of just acknowledging that I was continually bailing myself out, and then I needed to just admit that I spent what I spent and increase the amount dropping into my spend account each month. So I recommend everyone start with a little bit more than you think you actually need in the spend account, or the spend and the big spend if you decide you like to do it that way. How these numbers will work for you are going to be different for every family, so keep in mind that all the numbers here I used were just a simple example, and that you should sit down and figure out what might work best for you. If you don't know what amount to start with in your spend account, just look at what you've spent on average on your credit card for the last 6 months, round that, and start transferring that amount into your spend account each month. I hope you found this really helpful. I think it's a great way to make expenses a lot more simple, keep you on track better than budgeting, and make savings the default instead of spending. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Otherwise, if this was helpful, please like, subscribe, or leave a comment on the video. It really helps us out.